I'd like to correct a little bit of information before we start. I did read something and I'm gonna read it out so that I can correct some information. It says that once that high density zoning is approved, the developers can build whatever they want. The urban reserve will not need to follow any of our suggestions. But in the end, neither will any of the developers. They will just need to stay under the density number and they can build any crap they want. There's going to be a lot of cheaply built rental properties popping up everywhere, and none of them will require any council approval. So that information that spreads out to the community provides such false information and stirs and creates fear, and we're here to correct that information today. A secondary plan, as you see in the handout that we provided to you, is a framework for development. Tonight, we don't have any developer at the table. We don't have any applications for development. Our council has been, our RM and council has placed a moratorium on development since 2020. In the interim of knowing that development will come into the future, we have decided to be proactive in the approach of development to ensure that development into the future adheres to our bylaws and our vision for development. A secondary plan is not an approval. It is the framework to create policy, which then creates bylaws, zoning bylaws, which then council of the day would use when applications come forward for approvals. So we're setting the framework for the future. The east side of 59 only. This zoning secondary plan does not apply to all of East St. Paul, but it does take into account all of East St. Paul's zoning bylaws currently. Meaning we have R17, R10, R18, and we have a multifamily zoning as well with a height requirement. So council, you know, every time an application comes forward, there's always a fear in the community of what that might look like. It's not going to adhere to our bylaws. And we want to make sure that developers can check off boxes and say, we're confident that what we've designed is going to be potentially approved by council of the day, and council should be making approvals based on their own bylaws. That's why they're created, to create you know, the checkbox for those developers. So tonight, I just want to be clear, we have no development on the table. The east side of 59 Highway really looks like it's a 15 to 50 year build out into the future. There's no talk of transit. There's no talk of controlling First Nations. We do know that First Nations owns land on the other side of 59 Highway, and we work with them. We're good partners with them right now, and they're collaboratively working with us, and we want to ensure that that continues. And that is why we're working with them to create a secondary plan. They've been in the conversations with us from the beginning. And when individuals say that there's no tax base from First Nation property and reserved lands, that's false statement. First Nations will not pay for government because they have their own government. They won't pay for administration because they have their own administration. What they do pay for through an MSA, which is a service agreement, is infrastructure and servicing. So they do pay a tax base, but it's a percentage of what our tax base is because they don't pay for all of what we provide. So there is a portion that comes to the municipality. It is not free to them. So I wanted to correct that first and foremost. As for moving forward, Susan is going to present the first draft of the secondary plan. Through comments through the first open house that we had, the individuals that were present, and we did that over 2 days. So this is the first draft. Council has just received this draft as well. So we're viewing it as you're viewing it, and comments and our opinions will be placed maybe on the board tonight too. So nothing is finalized. We're just in the starting of the secondary plan. And once again, this is only for east side of 59 Highway, and we have no development that is on the table for approval. So I'll pass the floor off to Susan now, and she'll explain to you all the great work that they've been doing the last several months. Thank you.
Good evening. So as Mary said, for those of you who weren't here in May,
My name is Susan Henderson, and along with Matt Lambert and Camille Cortez from DPZ Co-Design and my firm is Placemakers, we're your consultant team that have been involved in working with you to envision and draft the plan. I also wanted to say I recognize a lot of faces from May. It was a very well-attended workshop. Matt and I were just having a chat about you all this morning because I think from a visioning perspective, when it's like everything is available to talk about, we had more thoughtful, broad-ranging, really deep engagement in May with the community that was here. And it was over 70 people, so it was a similar crowd, not quite as big. And you gave us some really great material that you'll see in the plan. We heard about the need for another recreation center. We heard about the need as this plan develops over time, where are the kids gonna go to schools? We need schools. So you'll see when Matt talks in detail about the concept plan, that those ideas are embedded in it. And thank you for that because you've helped create what we have to consider tonight. And as the mayor said, this also is just the first draft. It's just beginning. People, it's easy to envision, and but you can really sharpen your pencil when you start critiquing because you have something to actually consider. And so with that in mind, after the presentation, this is purely a presentation format in here. And then we have the critical maps on the wall outside. So your staff, your council, your mayor, and the design team will be there to have conversation with you. We'll have sticky notes for you to leave written comments. And then we'll be able to use those to edit the plan accordingly. So why plan? The East St. Paul Secondary Plan is more than just about future development. It's about managing growth thoughtfully, as the mayor said. The whole area, you all are seeing increased development pressures due to your incredibly desirable location adjacent to Winnipeg and also regional housing needs. So the secondary plan will direct this growth in a way that benefits the entire community. And as the mayor said, it's not zoning. It is not the thing that entitles the property owner to start building. This is only policy, and you have to have policy first before you have to have the zoning, and any zoning request has to comply with the policy that's underneath of it. So I'm sorry, the Planning Act, the Manitoba Planning Act, and everywhere we work, planning is a complicated, convoluted, layered process. And so it's kind of hard to keep all those layers separate, but that is the purpose of a secondary plan. It seeks to address infrastructure challenges such as your limited sewer capacity. It seeks to balance the interests of existing residents who wish to maintain a quiet rural lifestyle with the development rights of the First Nations landholders and the need to expand the RM's tax base. We heard from the very first meetings we had in May that you need more commercial development because that is important to the fiscal solidity of the RM. And so the plan's strategic framework will ensure that growth is managed in a way that enhances existing community character and meeting future needs. So the planning area, the blue part of the map, covers almost 1,000 acres, and most of it is undeveloped. And it's very well positioned for new development due to its accessibility to the perimeter highway, to Highway 59, and the adjacency to the city. A significant portion of the undeveloped land is held by Indigenous partners, including the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation and the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust. And both of those landholders have ideas for what they want to do on those properties. And the RM has been making, as the mayor mentioned, they have been making great strides in collaboration with Vaughn, the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. They've been very involved, they shared their ideas. And so their goals are also embedded in this plan. Oops, sorry. So what are the vision and goals? It's a community that's connected, complete, sustainable, context sensitive, and accessible. And I think the one that we heard from you in May that was the most crucial is the context sensitivity. Don't put urban development adjacent to the rural estates that already exist. Provide a framework that protects and buffers the people that have invested in that area. And so the vision for the secondary plan is to do that, to integrate diverse land uses and housing options while maintaining portions of the rural character that's valued by so many of you. The goals focus on creating walkable neighborhoods where essential services and amenities are easily accessible to all, not just to those who have a car. And reducing the need to travel outside the community, and a large part of that assists in the fact that at the moment, you all have a severe retail leakage to Winnipeg and surrounding communities because you don't have enough people living here to incentivize the commercial development to come. And so the plan seeks to diversify all of those things, thus funding necessary infrastructure improvements and future public services. So this map of colors shows you the 3 new types of places that the secondary plan, the draft is proposing. They're crafted to establish communities that concentrate growth in designated areas. The village centers serve as focal points with mixed-use development, featuring shops, restaurants, offices, housing, and community services. That's the pink. And this approach helps to meet the goals of expanding the commercial tax base while providing amenities that reduce the retail leakage I mentioned. The village neighborhoods are a step down in intensity that offer diverse housing options, catering to a variety of household types and ages. And then the village edges, the lighter yellow, preserve the area's rural feel by transitioning to the lower intensity residential development that exists today. And it ensures that growth doesn't overwhelm those existing homes. So this little diagram Matt did is, we call it a structure diagram. And it just shows that the goal of the policy is that every village has some of everything. It's not all high intensity and it's not all low intensity. It's a mixture. So here are just some photos from other places to give you an idea of what village centers can look like. They range in height. Some of the best village centers where Matt lives in Portland, Oregon, one of the best ones I know is a 1-story Main Street. So they don't have to be intense, but they can be. And the reason to permit it is because if you concentrate the development, there's a lower cost of maintenance of infrastructure. You're putting more things in one place. Therefore, it's more sustainable long term for the RM to manage the economic impacts of the infrastructure. Buildings are intended to vary in intensity, with the taller ones being at the center and the lower ones at the edge. Open spaces such as village squares act as focal points for social interaction and events, making village centers true community anchors. Village neighborhoods provide a transition from the activity of the center to the tranquility of the edge. And these areas offer a range of housing options, making it possible for individuals and families of different sizes and ages to live within the same community. It's the perfect place to live if you're looking to age in place and you don't want to lose all your neighbors. The neighborhoods are designated with walkable streets and interconnected pathways that encourage casual social interactions. Occasionally, small shops or cafes may be permitted near parks or key intersections adding to the community's character without overwhelming its residential nature. The focus in this type is on maintaining a balance between activity and calm, with a smooth transition in building height and density as you move from outward once again from the center. And then the village edges are like much of what you have in East St. Paul already. It's single family detached. It serves as the next transition down toward the existing rural estates. And these areas are designated to maintain the peaceful rural character by limiting the types of housing that are there. And they have larger lot sizes to reflect the lower density. And the design principles ensure a seamless blend with the existing residents. So then this is one of the crucial pieces when you're looking at a very large undeveloped area is how do people get around? What is the transportation network? And transportation policies are essential for planning for the future because creating a well-connected street network in the long term reduces any potential for congestion. And that's something that we heard from you at the workshop in May is what's going to happen with the traffic. Well, that has to be managed. And therefore, we're proposing a number of connections, 3 connections north to south, and two additional ones east to west. So much, like I said, much of the plan area isn't served by streets now. So as applicants come forward, they will be compelled through policy to connect to this framework. And so as those paper streets go through parcels that are undeveloped, that will have to become a part of their plan. This is especially important as the community grows. It helps reduce traffic, improves air quality, and supports your RM sustainability goals. And parks are an important thing as well. Hey, your call, I don't care.
Yeah, that's good.
Parks and open space are critical components of the plan, not only for recreation, but also for land drainage. For those of you who live here, you know that's a pretty flat site. And we talked to your RM engineer when we were here in May, and he was coordinating with Matt about where the primary capacity is for the culvert in the northwest corner. And so Matt designed this amazing park system that he will talk to you about in a moment that consolidates drainage across multiple properties. And it puts it into a park system that becomes an amenity for the entire community. It doesn't just have a bunch of retention ponds, it actually creates an open space network. And with that, I will turn it over to Matt.
Before you go, I have a quick question. If I may.
Can we have the questions outside? I'm sorry, we're already so far over time.
Well, I'll try to be relatively quick then. So I guess it's good we turn the lights off because there's more detail in these drawings. But the funny thing is that this detail is less real than what we were just looking at. So it's a weird thing to kind of square with. But the reason that we drew this in a greater amount of detail was to ensure that when we're proposing where lines might be between one land use category and another, that they're a realistic place to put that line. So we drew this as though it was a development of all the open lands that are undeveloped. However, it's not actually a proposal, it's just our test to see, well, how many streets should really go through and what's the spacing look like and how big is a village center in this place versus another. So I just want to reiterate, this is not an actual development concept from anyone, but us to draw the lines on the prior plan to then allow future development for the landowners when they choose to bring a proposal forward, right? So this was informed, as Susan said, there's some thought has gone into what the potential future might be on some of the properties, specifically Bond, we've spoken with bit, gotten some concepts that they thought about. So, in general, some of the things that they're thinking about, and that helps to deliver some realism to what might go in one place or another. What is the demand for any commercial uses or for residential facilities and so forth. So really what this concept is looking at for the whole plan area is to, and Susan quickly showed a diagram that I don't have back here, but in the beginning. And it's-
slide.
No, there's a different one. It's outside. It was a little sketch that I drew that shows a little Main Street area and then a road curving through a rural area and then back to the Main Street area. The goal there is to preserve that rural space between places that might be a center of activity, that might be developed with more intensity or commercial uses, to preserve that character of the rural area in between. And so the goal of what we're drawing here, and you'll see it on the next slide, is to have essentially what we call 3 village centers. Those are the darker areas that you see here. And then to transition in intensity from those village centers, which may have a 1-story Main Street, maybe they're 3 stories. It really sort of depends on the characteristic and the landowner's desires, but to step down to the existing rural estate. So it's not all developed at a high intensity, but it differentiates. And so this is really about informing the policies, and that those policies are going to determine the center locations, the neighborhood areas, parks, and as Susan discussed, the primary transportation connections. So then whatever happens within there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the landowners, and as we heard, that later goes through a process of zoning change requests and development requests, which all gets reviewed and passed by the bylaws and so forth. So it's a much longer process. So I wanted to put this diagram again that Susan just spoke about up here, and related to the circles that are drawn on this map. And the goal here in this development concept and in this first draft of a land use plan is to identify where the center should be, which is basically the middle of those circles, and then to align the other land uses so that they lower in intensity going out from there, like on the right, but in physical reality on the ground. So we've looked at these 3 different areas. We call them the 3 villages. We have some conceptual names. That's not their, we're not developing. The name could be anything, but it just helps to think about it from a conceptual standpoint as 3 villages, and we drew them a little bit differently. One area we drew with very regular square blocks. Another area we drew with blocks that are a little bit irregular and curvy, and another area we drew with small cranky streets, just to show that when it comes to development, we may have some policies that say your blocks need to be a certain size, maximum size. And we have that policy because we want to have more connections for cars to get around, so you're not all stuck on one road and stuck at that one traffic, that one stop sign that you can never make a left turn out of, but to also make it possible to walk and bike and get around more easily. So that's really about the connection. Those are the sorts of things that land in the policy. It doesn't say your blocks have to be square and 300 feet by 500 feet. So it's just this other level in between. So when we dive into the villages, so we've named them Wenzel to the north because there's a twist in Wenzel to align to an updated interchange with the provincial highway. So where that twist, we called that Wenzel Village for reference here. To the left, we named that area Sage Village, and then down to the south, we call that McGregor Farm Village, just to sort of conceptualize and be able to differentiate. So again, this is an example of what could potentially be an outcome of the land use priority in this first draft. So here in Wenzel Village, the concept, because it's closest to the perimeter highway, or the provincial highway, it's going to really have the most potential non-residential demand, right? It has the most ability to support commercial uses. So we drew blocks that were square, but we really wanted to work in concepts, as Susan had mentioned, a village square. So that's what the red The red line is circling a village square that's identified as sort of a center of community, a place you might have community events. And then any of the buildings sort of along that red line, maybe these are locations that have commercial uses, whereas some of the other dark buildings may not. As Susan had referred to, we heard goals for another recreation facility. That's what we drew in blue at the top, that blue building that's sitting around green. That's a place where the RM owns property, and it's a really good location from that stormwater needs system. So Susan had described the parks. We looked at the stormwater drainage and flooding and so forth in the area. And that's something that can't be solved on a property by property basis, but really has to be solved collectively. And this area happens to be where that water will drain to and has the best opportunity of crossing a culvert under the provincial highway. So there's limited ways to get water out of the area. And so this is sort of coordinating that with the recreational facility and so forth. And to the south, there's a blue building that's designed as a location. Maybe this would be a great location for an elementary school. Not within the sort of more dense Main Street area, but off in the neighborhood. So it's nearby, it's easy to get to, but it's surrounded by housing and not on the main street. And so, essentially what we're showing this circle, and as I mentioned circles before, that circle is describing the area that's really easy to get around if you're walking or biking, also easy to drive. But that shows us the extent of approximately where you should have the opportunity for maybe some taller buildings and units like townhomes before you start to transition to single family homes and larger lots towards the edges and connecting to the existing rural estates. And these were some aspects of this village concept I've described. A few of them, the alignment of the road, potential elementary school, and how you might step out in intensity from the center to the edge. And in blue is really identifying this proposed idea that does find itself more so in the land use policy, which is a connected system of parks that can handle stormwater. So other details like what houses go where and so forth would be dictated in this plan draft as a transition of intensity, but the sort of parks and stormwater are a critical piece. The other thing that we studied on this site in particular were the transportation connections, as Susan had mentioned, 3 connections across to distribute traffic. And the reason that we're drawing a grid like this of streets is to distribute cars to make it easy to walk and bike as well. The next village concept stage, this is really to the left, but this is a pair of very large properties, one owned by Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, the other by Pirates First National Real Estate Trust, and they're connected together. We drew them as one design that could be separated just to see, what are those street connections and how do we handle the stormwater needs and these other aspects of the community. To the top left is one particular center, same type of graphic representation here, where that red line is probably where you have a sort of high street environment, a main street of some sort. And then that transitions out from the center of the circle area, which may be more intense, and down to a lower scale of buildings and to single family homes and into the rural estates that are beyond. There's actually 2 circles we see in the bottom right is another one. Because this area is large, it happens to find its way to the 3rd village, Gregor Farm Village in the bottom right, and you'll see that right after this one. Some key aspects that we looked at here, as you can hopefully tell, there's a lot more green in this one than others because there's a great deal of stormwater here. There's already existing ponds, also a pond and drainage system in the existing golf course. So we're sort of stitching those together in this design in order to manage that stormwater. In blue, the larger building that we show in blue is a proposal for a location that might be good for a high school. So we heard that desire for schools. And along with the stormwater system and a large system of parks, it's a good location also to locate a high school, and also that finds itself not far from Wenzel, so it's easy to get to. And so again, some details that we have similar to the others in blue, we're showing how stormwater might need to be managed. If you do this just on one property alone, you actually can't sufficiently remove the stormwater from the areas. Again, it's really important to think about this system for the long-term growth in the area. And then some other things in yellow, there's Manitoba Hydro easement. These are some of the details that we just want to make sure as we're testing. Could you follow the rules to develop the site that you could actually do so? And as you go from the top left to the bottom right, there's some higher intensity of the two sides, and they feather a bit, but it's really transitioning in the other direction to the rural estates. And so if you can see the details, some of the sort of yellow squares are larger. Those are larger properties, and they get smaller as they get closer to the buildings. So that's just a representation of that village concept of just having a small area of higher intensity taller buildings and feathering down in that intensity to the rural estates. And I didn't point out, in this one, we were sort of being a little bit more wiggly with the blocks. It's how I described that. We're not saying you have to do a square block, but that it's important that you have blocks of a certain size so that you can distribute traffic, so that people can also walk, and so you can bike as well. So that connectivity through the streets that achieves a lot of those goals. But there's a lot of ways to do this. So this one was a little more wiggly. And then in this third village concept, we really broke the scale down. So, okay, well, this concept in the south, we called it McGregor Farm Village. And in part, because it's at the edge of the RM, to the north across McGregor Farm Road is outside of the RM. So it really has a rural adjacency. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to try something that we feel is like a softer approach. You don't come into a main street, but more so you come into a green with some water in it, and sort of buffer off of Wenzel instead of being right on Wenzel as it's getting closer to the highway. And then a transition in some uses. This one is a little bit different because on the bottom we have some brown buildings again. This is adjacent to the highway. And as you have on the other side, to the left of Wenzel, that's underneath our key, there's some employment uses there. They're labeled industrial, but not really industrial. It's more warehousing and so forth. There's a school over there. So we're drawing that sort of use, continuing along the edge of the highway, because it's not great to have a house right up against the highway if you can avoid it. And there's other uses that are useful to have there. So this concept has a smaller center, a little bit of development, but it's really feathering towards the rural character to the north, and also that's to the north and to the east. So again, like the others, we pointed out opportunities to manage stormwater. This one's not part of the system. It doesn't need to be part of the stormwater system across the way because the roads block it. So this area has to manage its own stormwater. So we're showing that all the way to the left, again, an opportunity that could be combined into parks. So a lot of times when we're writing policy or bylaw, again, we're not writing the bylaw, but a lot of times when we do that, we'll say, you can have stormwater management, and if you do an ugly pond with a fence, fine, that's what you're gonna do, but you could also do it as part of a park. And we're gonna make you do a park anyways. And so there's opportunities to combine them that make it more fiscally viable for a developer. It's like an incentive. Hey, make us more great parks instead of just stormwater ponds. So that's a way to incentivize more park space. So this is sort of looking at that sort of idea. And again, a little bit of mixed use, but in a small scale, and then that transition to townhomes and single family homes. Not a requirement for any of those things, but enabling the landowner to choose the amount of commercial that fits within the village center type, and the amount of any type of housing that might be within the village neighborhood. In land use, the village neighborhood may correlate to some zoning that would then eventually allow you to maybe have a townhome or a small single family home or a large home. And it's really up to the landowner and developer eventually, when they bring forth an application, whether they choose to do one or the other, and that depends on what they think they can sell. And so that's the sort of line between the village center and the village neighborhood and the village edge. So again, that was to test concepts and test the lines. Those are the lines that we had outside. But we wanted to demonstrate the sort of thinking that went into the lines. They're not just arbitrarily drawn, they're drawn with some measure to ensure that it's not unrealistic. So we wanted to touch on where we've been, next steps, but I mean, Susan, she's familiar. She asked me to draw, but she knows the process.
So you all have been crucial in the development of this plan. Those of you who participated in May were absolutely the vision. And so since May, we've conducted community meetings, workshops, discussions with landowners. All the residents that lived in the planning area were invited, and the indigenous partners. So your feedback really has shaped the draft, but as the mayor said, it's first time council we only gave it to your staff last week, so it's new to everybody. And so there's going to be a lot of critique, and we expect that and we invite it, because every time a community gets robustly engaged in a policy document, it gets better. So we're eager to hear what you think about it. The anticipated, depending on how many edits you have, the anticipated final draft will be available for council to consider sometime in the first quarter of next year. And so thank you so much for your time and attention. Thanks for caring about policy. Let me just wrap up and then. And we do look forward to your feedback. Now, we aren't going to have a discussion in the room. We're going to have one-on-one conversations with you in the hallway. We want. No, the technical reason we do it is because we can't remember everything you say. And that's why we ask you to write it down. And then we document all the comments and they feed back into our work. That is our planning best practice.
This is to be live, so there would be a copy, you know?
Yes, it is.
So then that is an issue.
That's documented.
So that's recorded. It's documented. You have somebody transcribe it.
We're going to move out into the hall. The plan is that we're going to ask you to use your sticky notes and put your comments on the board. Council is in the room. Council is in the room. Planners are in the room. Staff are in the room. I'm going to ask for respect in the audience just for a moment until I continue my conversation. We have our planners, we have our staff, we have council. We are going to facilitate all your questions and all your comments, and we encourage you to put your comments and all your questions on the sticky note. If it's the best practice to get the most information out of a large group. So that's where we're going to move is into. And
That's because you don't want to hear
it's not because we don't want to hear your opinions. We do want to hear your opinions and we will listen. And if I have to stay here till 1 a.m. to listen to your opinions, we'll do that. But one by one coming up is not productive. I can honestly tell you that. It will take very long. Most people won't get their points across. We won't get your information. We appreciate your information being posted on the boards. That information gets taken back when they do the next draft and that comes forward again. So we appreciate your cooperation and we will now take your questions, but we'll move into more of a setting where we're mixing and mingling with everybody in the group.
That's because you don't want everybody to hear what everybody else has to say.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you because everybody can listen. You can gather in groups and you can talk.
Hey, can I interrupt for a moment? Is this kind of conversation that's not productive? People are speaking.
You're not from here, you don't understand.
Yeah, you don't live here.
You're an American, you don't understand, you guys do it differently down there.
No, we do it the same way down there.
I'm gonna ask that there's respect in the audience to our presenter. Respect is to the presenter, and she's going to take the floor right now.
So as you speak over each other, the people who are more restrained or shy or don't like to talk in public, they get left behind. And so the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations means that everyone, even those who don't want to talk in front of a room full of people, are able to be heard. And so it doesn't leave people behind. And we have chosen this method, and that's how we're proceeding with the evening.
Conversation with everyone individually in this room will take 2 days.
We have a big,
So moving forward, I hope you understand that this is a process where we're creating a document. When this goes to public hearing, you will all have the opportunity to stand up and speak your views and your opinions at the public hearing. Council will listen to all of your comments on that day. Today, we're working towards developing the plan itself. And this is the way that the consultants would like to move forward tonight. And I appreciate if everybody respects that and works with them to get this accomplished. But all of you can stand up and speak to council and talk to your community at the public hearing when we have that based on the secondary plan when it's finalized.
That's it, the plan was finalized.
Comments are considered on the board. It is not too late. It is not too late then. You can put your comments on the board.